Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tim. This is another Real Ideal Gear review. And today we're looking at the watches that scored 10 out of 10 in the reviews for 2023. There weren't that many of them that scored 10 out of 10. Matter of fact, there was probably twice to maybe three times as many that scored 9.8 out of 10, 9.9 out of 10, maybe even a 9.7 out of 10. At any rate, I want to go through some of these watches, the 10 out of 10s, and just kind of highlight them a little bit for this year. Also, the honorable mentions, which are those that scored the 9.8s or the 9.9s out of 10. And then, of course, there's this whole other category called Casio out there, and none of them are really going to get a 10 out of 10. There's always something about a Casio that is just a little bit different because they have so many different models, and frankly, I'm not a fan of their straps, so I don't think they're ever going to get a 10 out of 10 from my book. So anyway, I want to highlight some of the ones that I've kept, the ones that I've gotten rid of, or I have for sale. I do have a couple more that I've posted for sale on my realidealgear.com website. So if you're interested in that, check that out as well. So let's get started. Let's talk about some of the honorable mentions for this past year, 2023. And there's just a handful of those watches that are out there, maybe two handfuls, but less than 10. And then we'll get into the 10 out of 10 watches for this past year. So first up for the honorable mentions is the Zelos Hammerhead Frost Bronze Case Edition. This is one of my favorite all-time divers. It's a great watch, limited edition, so there's no more of these that I'm aware of that are out there. But this is just a catch on my part. I was just lucky enough to get this one, and I really like this. The Frost dial, the full lume dial is incredible. It's a night light at night. Blacked out handset makes it very legible day and night. You've got a date window that's, this is where it scored a little bit lower than it probably should have. Maybe it's a 10 out of 10, but I gave it a less than 10 out of 10 score. The strap is great, but what really steals the show is the bronze case. The bronze case, when you get it, is obviously a different color, looks almost rose gold-like, but over time, you're going to see a color of this that you see in the photographs, and I absolutely love this case. Next is the Steel Dive Willard. One of my first purchases on AliExpress, and I heard so much about this watch. Oh, you got to have this in your collection. And you know what? It's true. This is really one of those watches under $100 that is dollar for dollar one of the best dive watches I think you can buy out there. Certainly less than $100. NH35 movement, great colorway. The lume on this is incredible, including on the bezel. The bezel action is great. The bracelet is solid. I love the clasp. You have plenty of adjustments on the clasp. But overall, this is one of those watches. It's not quite perfect, but there is so much about this watch that I like. It has to be in the honorable mentions. Next up is the Citizen ProMaster Nighthawk. This is an Eco Drive movement, which is a great movement. It's a grab and go. Just keep a little sunlight on it on a daily basis, and you'll never have to worry about the battery. Of course, this watch is all about the pilot watch and all about the E6B ruler that's on there, the slide rule. And take the time to learn this. I think it's fascinating. There's all kinds of conversions that you can do on here between metric and standard. So take the time to learn this one. I like this watch. It's surprisingly legible. I don't know about you, but when you look at the photographs, I can definitely see the handset is awesome. The 12 and the 6 really distinguish things out a bit. The lume is okay. It's not the best, but overall, this watch is a great honorable mention for pilot watches. Next is the Revlot Hex Mariner 39. Now, this watch was one that I just happened to come across. They had these for sale. Now, a number of these models were, they had been sold out, and so there was a few of them left. But honestly, I think I got the one that I really liked the most, which was the Army color, which is the green gold gilding on the watch. This is about as much gold as I can tolerate. And matter of fact, this is the perfect amount of gold. It highlights the bezel, highlights the handset, highlights the hour markers, and the hex design throughout the entire watch is absolutely fascinating. This design, to me, is one of the most cohesive designs to a watch that's out there today. I just cannot get enough of looking at this watch. And again, it has a little bit of gold on there. This is probably the blingiest watch that I'm going to get, and I'm okay with that. I love the colorway between the green and the gold. The date wheel is great. The bezel action is perfect. It lines up great. Overall, it's a great watch. 200 meters of water resistance. It's a great dressy dive watch. Next is perhaps the best EDC on the market, which is the Baltony Vintage Chronograph. This is a quartz movement. It has a 60-minute time totaler, which is where I dinged this watch when I did my initial review, but honestly, that's probably not the most fair way to do this. But at the same time, the 60 minutes is just not enough for me and for the work that I do. But for an everyday carry watch or for a grab and go kind of a watch, this watch hits all the marks. It's a great chronograph. It has excellent lume, easy legibility to read. This watch is fantastic. The NATO strap is probably one of the best NATO straps that I've got. And of course, Baltony is known for their sapphire crystals, and this crystal is awesome. So overall, this watch probably could have been a 10 out of 10. Unfortunately, not quite because, well, I'm a stickler when it comes down to the chronograph subdials, and I prefer something more than 60 minutes. The Laurier Hydra Zulu GMT. Wow. Now I was actually looking at the Hyperion on their website, and I've had my name on that, email me when something comes up, subscription list, whatever that list is called. I've been on that list for months. And this watch came up, and it was a new release, and I looked at this watch, and there was one thing on this watch that caught my attention, and it was the fact that it was a GMT. It had the 24-hour dial, but it also had a regular dive watch timing bezel on the bezel. So I didn't have another 24-hour timing bezel to work with. I had an actual timing bezel, which I love. You got the 24-hour dial on the inside, and you've got the timing bezel on the outside. Great combination, great lume, great movement. I love the red GMT hand. The design is awesome. The strap, the holes are Casio spacing on the holes on the strap. Not my favorite. But overall, this watch hits so many marks. And frankly, it was the strap that kind of dinged this thing out of the 10 out of 10. But a great honorable mention nonetheless. Swiss Watch Company. This watch has won and rated so high on a few of my competitions, internal competitions for law enforcement, for field watches. It is a fantastic watch. This watch probably could be a 10 out of 10, and to be fair, it's the date window. Kind of the date window is catching a lot of these watches. I would rather have the date window take up the entire 6 o'clock marker and not be, trying to do both. So that's really where the ding happened on this one. But overall, you've got excellent lume. Some of the best lume on a field watch, and some of the best lume overall for any watch that I've seen. Great legibility, titanium case, extremely lightweight, very easy to read, and a high beat movement. You can't go wrong with this watch, and really for the price, I think it's one of the best values for a high beat movement with the lume and the titanium case that's out there. Right. This one breaks my heart not to be 10 out of 10, but I have to stay honest to what I rated, and this one wasn't a 10 out of 10 because the hour numbers, the numerals on the dial for the hours were just not quite big enough. I think they could have been a little bit bigger as far as the design goes, make it a little bit easier to read as a pilot watch goes. But this watch is fantastic. Manual wind movement. I have some video here of the back side. It has a display case back. You can see the manual wind movement in action. Great handset, great design. I love the leather strap. The overall look of this is fantastic. And for the small second hand, it has that turbine on it. And I think the turbine is just the middle school kid in me coming out saying, you know what, rather than a regular second hand, I want to see a turbine with a red dot on it. And they actually have it numbered off so you can keep track of the seconds if you want to as well. So this is just a fantastic AliExpress Rudland vintage turbine pilot watch. I think it's value for money, one of the best hand winds out there, especially on AliExpress. Sapphire crystal, it's got decent enough water resistance out there that this watch can do an awful lot. Last but not least, another AliExpress, which is the Pierre Pauline Vintage Chronograph. This watch got dinged on one thing and one thing only, and that it's a little chunky. The rest of it, I love this. This is hitting some of my passions when it comes down to just design overall, and it's that Art Deco design. I love the stepped up bezel into the crystal, the sapphire crystal, the layout of the subdials, the reverse panda. It's great for legibility. Lume not so good. It's kind of a dress watch, so you give it a pass for that. Dress watches aren't supposed to have good lume, so I'm not going to ding that for that. I didn't ding it for that. It really was for the chunkiness of it. The design, if it could have been maybe a 2 millimeters bigger case or a millimeter bigger case, I think it just would have eased that chunkiness or that chunky feel overall. But I love this watch. Great ST 1901 movement, which everybody knows when it comes down to the movement. Sometimes you win, more often times you win, sometimes you lose. This has been a great movement. The timing on this one, the accuracy has been great. So this is one of those honorable mentions that was just so close. Probably, like most of these, if I was to do the review again, they'd probably have a few more 10 out of 10s out of this bunch for sure. All right, let's talk Casios. These are the watches that I've gotten rid of, given away, sold, maybe still on the realidealgear.com website. I just put another one on there. But these are the watches that I'm willing to get rid of. Most of these have the same issue. It's a legibility issue. So let's get started with the first one. The F200. It didn't work for me for the reasons I just laid out. It has the circle indicator on there. The display is compressed as a result of it. Not a fan of that one at all. The 110 is another one that has the same issue. It also has this kind of like, it's trying to be the square, but it's not really the square. And I just don't, it's trying to be too many things at the same time, and I'm just not a fan of that one. The Casio Royale, you talk about legendary following, you've got dedicated follow. The Royale is the greatest watch of all time. I don't buy it. And matter of fact, it's a really good watch. It's a great world time watch. There's no doubt about that. The legendary status of this watch as one of the best world time watches out there is unquestionable. The problem I have with it is, again, all that stuff on there compresses the display for reading the time. And I know that the world time thing is important, but isn't reading the time on the watch just as important? Matter of fact, it's got to be more important, I think. So from that perspective, this watch is out. The AQ S810. I really wanted this watch to be one that I could hang on to. It's a tough solar watch, which is great, low maintenance. You don't have to worry about batteries. Just keep it in the sunshine. It has the anti-digit display. I love the analog part for time reading. I'm a traditional guy. I like the analog more than I like the digital side. But the display, just too small. Doesn't cut it. See you later. The Wavescepter WV200A. I love the look of this watch. This is one of the best looking Casios that I've come across. I love the design, a little bit of chrome in there. You've got the darker black resin case components that go around it, the pushers, all of it looks great. But it has too much crap on the display. You've got the year on there, you've got the indicator circle again. I mean, I'm just so tired of this. And what happens is you have a hard time reading. Now, if I don't have these guys with me, it really gets to be difficult to read, not just the time, but have you looked at the day and the date on this thing? It's almost microscopic. I'm not, even with these on, it gets to be kind of hard. And the AQ S810, which I just got done talking about, even with my glasses on, I have a harder time reading some of that stuff. It's pretty small. So, see you later. This one breaks my heart. MRW 200, the Magpie. This is the analog watch that I really like. It just is a classic dive-looking watch. It has a friction bezel, which I really like. The indicators on it are great. The illumination, not very good. This was more of a question of just too many Casio watches in my collection, and I've got a bunch of dive watches. Do I really need a Casio dive watch in my collection? No. See you later. All right, the F108, same syndrome as the MRW 200 Magpie. The F108 just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. I've got a number of watches that really kind of cover the same ground. But what I like about the F108 is that it kind of has a little G-Shock look to it. It has all the functions that the legendary F91 has, which, by the way, it is only a legend. As far as function goes, it's terrible. I have one. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep the F91. But I'm only keeping it as a reference. I will never wear it again because I can't stand wearing it. The light on it is terrible. The legibility is poor. It just isn't for me. The F108 resolves a lot of those issues. Much bigger display, great light. But it's one of those that I just don't have the room for. All right. First on the list for the keepers is the W217. It's the antidote for the F91 and all the problems that it has when it comes to the display, the light, the fit, the size, just everything about it. The 217 is a little bit bigger in every way. The light's better, the display is bigger, the case is bigger, the strap is bigger. It just fits overall better, I think. So I like it for that reason alone. And because it's in that same price point category, it outseated the F108 as well. So those two took a back seat to this one. It's just my cheapest Casio that I have. And I think it does a good job of representing that cheapest Casio for the money. The Casio. The legendary Casio. I remember the hype a couple of years ago. Oh, you got to get the Casio. The Casio is the Royal Oak, the Casio's answer to the Royal Oak. I do like the design. I'm not a huge fan of the Royal Oak overall. I think it's an interesting design. And Casio doing it, yeah, okay. And they've done a few other things with Casio's done, I think, a Rolex Submariner homage of sorts. But anyway, I digress. This watch suffers from the anti-digi syndrome from the AQ S810. Same thing happening here. The display for the digital readout is just too small. But what I do like about this watch and why I'm keeping it is the Bluetooth function and the tough solar. With the Bluetooth function, you have access to your cell phone with the app, and you can type in reminders on this watch. And those reminders come up as announcements on the display. Now, for me, I have to have these on to even know what's scrolling across that very tiny screen, 4 or 5 letters at a time, but I can do that with these. So overall, I like this watch. I love the legibility of the analog display. It's very simple, and frankly, tough solar, Bluetooth, high accuracy, why not? Next up is the HDC 700. It's a data bank version kind of the Big Sky, which is the W736. My point being is I really like this watch because of the data bank function. I was thinking about this the other day when it came down to EDC watches, everyday carry watches, and what struck me was, what if I lose my phone when it comes to contacts? I don't have a way of remembering all these important phone numbers. So on this watch, you can type in 2930 phone numbers of emergency contacts, lawyers, insurance contact information, things like that. Be sure not to put anything sensitive in there, but just the contact phone numbers is not that big of a deal. So I have that. My wife's in there. I'm going to put my boys in there. I'm going to put some insurance information as far as contact phone numbers in there. So all that information will be there in case I lose my phone. I can still at least make a phone call. So for those reasons, I really like this watch, and I think this watch is going to be a keeper for a long time. Now, this is one of my all-time favorites when it comes down to a watch that's right around that $25 mark, and that is the W800. I call it the Gray Man. And the Gray Man because it's kind of that watch that's just, nobody really notices it, but when you look closely at it, 100 meters of water resistance, an excellent light, a good strap. You have the stopwatch function, you have the alarm function, you have the dual time function, and if you go and take the module out and just scrape off a little bit of solder off of one contact, you end up accessing a timer function. And not just a timer function, a recurring timer function. So that timer can go off repeatedly over and over again and annoy you over and over and over again. I think this watch is probably going to stay in the collection forever. I did swap out a Magpie strap that I had tried to oil fill it and didn't work out really well, and I kind of destroyed the watch. So I took the strap off of that Magpie and put it onto the Gray Man. Fits perfect, even looks even better. I like that swap overall. Great swap. The F201 jet really is the remedy to the F200. The F200 had that silly dial on there, that circular indicator. It just kind of broke up the display and made things just less legible. This is the answer to that one. And when I ordered both of them, I was like, okay, the F201, the F200, I'll do a comparison thing. The F201 is superior to the F200. I really like the F201. It's going to stay in the collection for a long time. The only downside of this watch is the water resistance rating is just water resistant. So yeah, I prefer to have at least 50 meters of water resistance, mostly because I'm banging these watches around and I just like to have that added strength in the water protection, added gaskets, whatever it is that they do to get to 100 meters or 200 meters. I like to have that added security with the work that I do with these watches. So the F201 is going to stay around for a long time. The Big Sky, the W736. This is one of my favorite watches that has kind of that G-Shock look to it. But what really caught my attention was the vibration alarm. Not alerting everybody in a room. If you're in a meeting, you can set an alarm or set the timer, and it vibrates on your wrist. Nobody really knows what's going on. It's just like a vibrate alert on your phone, in your pocket. You get the same feeling, you get the same idea. Okay, nobody is interrupted as a result of that. Great light. Overall, it's just a great watch. And also, it's in that, less than $40 category, so why not? Recently, I picked up the GD350. This is a G-Shock. I call it the Grunt, and I call it the Grunt because this is a watch that I've heard over and again being used by military personnel and even law enforcement personnel. So, and most of these guys are infantry guys too. So this watch is just fantastic. It has the vibration alert that we talked about with the Big Sky, but it also has the flash alert. So you can go between either one. When you set it to the flash alert, you get the flash alert and the audio. You can't separate those two. But I do like the fact that you can have the audio and the visual together, and then you can also switch back over to the vibration, which is the tactile alert. You've got a great alarm system on here. You've got a great timer, and the timer is accessible from the home screen. All you have to do is press the 4 o'clock pusher, and you start the timer. Whatever the timer is set at, it starts at that moment. The light on this is great. It has an auto light feature on this. The 6 o'clock button on there, if you want to press the button, it's a great. I love that. Set that button aside and put it to 6 o'clock position. Very easy to access. It's a chunky watch, typical kind of G-Shock height off the wrist and width and all that. But at the same time, you get 200 meters of water resistance. This is a much more legible dial as well, or legible display. So the GD350 is in some ways the big brother of the Square, but there's some things about the Square that the GD350 doesn't have. So let's talk about the Square. The Square, the 5610U, is one that I looked at the 5600 and I looked at the 5610, and what I really wanted was, if you're going to go low maintenance, then go low maintenance. Tough solar, atomic timekeeping. There's really not much that you need to do for this watch other than set it in a windowsill and just leave it there. It's always charged. It's always being updated to the correct time. So it's a great low maintenance watch. It has the stopwatch, alarm functions, world time functions. It has the auto light feature, so when you roll your wrist, the light comes on. Great light, electroluminescent, lights up the entire dial type light. The one thing I'm not a real fan of is the size of the buttons. This is where the GD350 I think is much easier to use, but the pushers on the 5610 are just a little bit too small and kind of hidden back behind the protecting the guards on the buttons. So for that reason, it's not my favorite to use when it comes to the button pushing, but overall it is an outstanding watch. And like the Casio, this watch is a low profile, not only height off the wrist, but also just overall size. And it's a G-Shock, so you get the 200 meters of water resistance and all the shock protection that goes with it. So this is, I think, when it comes to low maintenance, the best EDC watch that you can get out there. And I say that knowing that the Baltony Vintage Military Chronograph is another great EDC watch, but that's an analog watch. So if you're looking for an analog watch, I'd go with that one. If you're looking for a digital watch, low maintenance, everything, you got to go Casio 5610. Now, last up is, in my opinion, last up, and in my opinion, this is the best Casio that's out there for my purposes. Now, my purposes include a lot of outdoor work, a lot of outdoor recreation, and that's the PRW 6600Y. It's the ProTrek triple sensor outdoor watch. It has everything. It has 100 meters of water resistance. It has atomic timekeeping, tough solar. It has a big analog display. It has an adequate, I think it's actually about as small as it should go relative to the size of the dial, digital display. It has all the functions: stopwatch, timer, alarms, world time. It also records altitude, the latest altitude that you're at. Great functions on the digital display side. The light function is great. It lights up not only the digital display, but it also lights up the analog display. The analog also has loomed hands and hour markers, which also makes that useful as well. It is just the best outdoor watch I've ever come across. And because it's tough solar and everything on this is powered by the sun or whatever the light source is, you don't have to plug this watch in to use the altimeter, compass, temperature, and all those things. You don't have to do that. Now with the Suuntos and some of the other watches, the Apple Watch and things like that, they'll have all those functions, but more or less you're going to have to plug those watches in after a few days, couple weeks, whatever the usage time is on that. But this watch is totally self-contained, and to me, this is the ultimate for me. This is my bug out watch. This is my everyday carry watch. This is the watch that I would use if it came down to it. I was going to have to grab only one watch. This would be the watch because it has everything that I need on it. So there you go. There's the Casios, the keepers, and the non-keepers. Now for the perfect 10s. These are the watches that scored perfect 10s with one exception, and I'll tell you the one exception here in just a second. But they scored perfect 10s on my ratings, on my observations. And sure enough, I am biased. I'm not perfect when it comes down to the reasons why I chose certain things, the reasons why this received a high score and this received a low score. But I do have a list of 5 things I usually go through, which are size, fitment, finish, accuracy, legibility, and loom. And when I go through all those things, I'm looking at the function side of it, and certainly the artistic form side of things is appreciable. I love that kind of stuff. But, really, when it comes down to it, the watch needs to work, it needs to function, it needs to do the job that it's been hired to do, and that's tell me the time and do it as accurately as possible. So these are all the mechanical watches that scored a 10 out of 10. I'm going to start off with this first one, which is the Wise Adamascus 88. The Wise Adamascus is the best looking watch I have seen on the market when it comes to this colorway, when it comes down to the case design, when it comes down to the handset, the dial texture, the bezel. The bezel looks great. The function of the bezel. Like, there's so many things about this watch on the look side of it. It is fantastic. I put an Artem sailcloth strap on this, and it is off the charts gorgeous. It has the waterproof strap on there that you probably wouldn't even notice that it's a waterproof strap. At the same time, it looks fantastic. Just a deep, kind of almost shiny sailcloth strap on here, which really goes well with the watch, as you can see. So this watch to me is a 10 out of 10. It actually got a 9.8 out of 10. And here's the ding. It uses 904L steel, which is a really high polished steel. It's the same kind of steel that Rolex uses for their high polished cases. And the reason I gave it a ding, I knocked it down off the 10 out of 10 platform, was that it was more prone to scratches. And so I was like, well, you know what? That's kind of how it goes with a 904L steel. And that's what you bought, was something that was 904L high luster, high polished steel. So for that reason, I'm going to put this in the 10 out of 10 category. It, to me, really should be a perfect watch. It is in my opinion, the best micro brand dive watch on the market today. One more that really should be 10 out of 10, and I ding this one because of the clasp, is the AliExpress iPose 5303 Homage. And this watch, again, the clasp on this watch is really not it's not a very robust style clasp, but at the same time, this is the clasp that you get when you buy it. You know this when you get the watch, that it doesn't have the typical dive watch, safety clasp over whether it's a push button release or a friction release, whatever that happens to be. But you know this going into it. And so for me, this is the only thing that I ding this watch on. I mean, when you look at this watch, you look at the dial design, the lume is outstanding, the case, the strap, the integration of the strap into the lugs. I just love the design of this. The mesh bracelet, I've had mesh bracelets before. They were hair pullers. I wasn't really thrilled about it. This one is not a hair puller. It's a little bit more difficult to put on and to clasp down and in a snug enough fit, because you really you're only using one hand to do this, and you got to kind of coordinate how that works. But once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. But the looks of this watch, the function of this watch, it has a Sellita SW200 movement in it. It has a great, whiteout handset. The lume on this is great. And when you look at the lume pattern on this, what a fantastic lume pattern. I just love the overall design. And sure enough, it is an homage. So I'm not giving iPose the credit for the design. So for that reason, I think this watch really is a 10 out of 10. Should be included in the perfection category. It's one of the best AliExpress watches out there. It covers a lot of ground from casual all the way up to formal. The Wise Adamascus does the same thing, casual all the way up to formal. But the iPose 5303, absolutely, you can do this with casual to formal. So it covers a wide range of uses as well. As far as field watches go, if you've watched the channel and you've paid attention to the number of the videos that I have, I love field watches. And when I came across the Kingsbury MS4 Regiment, I looked at this watch and thought, oh my goodness, they actually combine two of the things I really like a lot. Number one is field watches, and number two is sector dials. And they've done that with this watch. I love the case design. It's almost a slab case design. It's got a great layout on the dial. Of course, you have the crosshairs there for the sector dial component of it. The lume on this watch is fantastic. It has an NH38 movement, so you don't have to worry about the ghost date position because there is no date on this. And I love the yellow second hand. I mean, there's just that touch of color in there. Nice dark black dial. Contrast is great. Legibility is off the charts. And the strap is really, really good. So to me, this is one of those watches that really is perfect. I couldn't see anything wrong with this watch. It is a 10 out of 10. And for the money, this is one of the best value field watches out there that has an NH38 movement in it. So now for dive watches, we're going to go back to AliExpress. And this is one of the best dollar for value dive watches that I've seen. And that is the San Martin SN036. It is an homage. At the same time, it's really, really well done. I love that fume dial that goes from a blue to a dark blue on the edges. You've got great contrast that way. It just accentuates the hour markers. The handset is incredible. The lume is incredible. The bezel works excellent. 300 meters of water resistance. So it's a little bit thicker when it comes down to the height off the wrist. So keep that in mind. But the look of this watch is fantastic. This has almost that Wise Adamascus semi-dress look to it. So I think you could pull off semi-formal with this watch. Certainly professional. Absolutely casual. If you want to use it for work, you certainly can, because it has a sapphire crystal and it has just a great tooly look to it as well. So kind of be careful because it is a higher off the wrist presence. But overall with the sapphire crystal, you shouldn't have to worry about the scratches. So to me, this is one of the best dive watches at this price point, right around that 200 and low, just under 250, I think, if I remember right, price point for this watch. So you can't go wrong with a watch like this. To wrap things up, we started with Zelos and we're going to end with Zelos. And this is the Swordfish bronze case field watch. To me, this watch is outstanding. It's what the Aurora tried to do, but they actually figured it out, or not figured it out, but they actually did it with this watch. Bronze case, and this is the second watch I've owned now with a bronze case. So I have the Zelos Hammerhead where I can see what the patina looks like, and I saw this one being advertised like, I'm going to get this watch because I know what that case is going to look like. It's going to have that really deep copper look to it, brass look to it. I really like the looks of that case. Now, when you look at the dial and everything that's going on in the dial, it is a great looking dial. It's organized. It has themes to it. The loom on this watch is outstanding. If you look at the loom pattern here, it's outstanding loom pattern on this watch. Great movement. Overall design is great. And the strap, if you look at the strap, the holes on the strap, they actually had the strap holes closer together. So for those out there that are saying, hey, Tim, that's just the industry standard, nobody does holes closer together, Zelos found the strap that has the holes closer together. Much easier to get a good fit and to maintain a good fit through hot days, cold days, activity, sitting on the couch, all of that. So yeah, there's pie not in my eye, but back at you for those of you that are saying that was an industry standard. So I really appreciate the strap on this watch a lot. It's just a great combination overall, great looking watch. And for me, burnt orange is one of my favorite colors. And so having a burnt orange dial on here is just outstanding. I love the color setup on this watch. It is wonderful. Again, it's the watch itself has great water resistance, sapphire crystal, screw down crown, just typical high quality Zelos manufacturing. So that's the list: the Wise, the iPose, the Kingsbury, and finally the Zelos. Those are the watches that scored perfect 10 out of 10s, or really should have been perfect 10 out of 10s for this past year, 2023. So I'm looking forward to this next year, 2024, to see what's out there when it comes down to watches that do a really good job. And I'll put a list up here in the near future of the watches that just did not make the cut. The less than wanted watches that I reviewed, but that'll be coming up later. So check out these other videos. Check out my store at realidealgear.com. Price includes free shipping to the lower 48 states in the United States. If you live outside the United States, email me first and we'll try to work something out. So there you go. My name's Tim. This has been another Real Ideal Gear review. We'll catch you guys next time. So 10 out of 10, way to go. Why am I saying way to go?